Actually, bring that up full screen just to be sure, because sometimes people's resolution changes when they go into full mode.
All good?
Unfortunately, this thing drags behind. Damn it. I think we're good. Go for it.
Okay, great. All right. Hello, everyone. I am Tom Steele. I work for Fishnet Security, and yeah, go Fishnet. And this is ShellSquid distributed shells with nodes. Okay, so we all love shells, right? And this is typically what we do. We get reverse payloads, right? Like, we use them, they work. So we send our msf.exe, a generic, by payload, to Brian here, and he runs it, and his firewall is denying all but allowing outbound 80 and 44443, and maybe he's even used a proxy, but hey, we're using interpreter and it works, and we're awesome and we get shells. Sweet. But here comes the problem. You need an IP and a port on the internet for that to work. And at Fishnet, I work with 20 consultants who are all really good at their job and who get lots of shells. And when 20 consultants attack 20 targets, you would need how many IPs?
Approximately
20. Yes. So we all want to use, so the problem is that all of us as consultants want to use, we all want to use port 443, and it so happens that my team has a lab with not 20 machines, but around 3 machines that we use for reverse handlers. I'm sorry? I'm going to keep going, but we'll talk later. Anyway, so we all want to use our own handler, and we all want to use 443. So some of the solutions that we came up that we're kind of talking about is using our own payload, stager, handler, all that, and kind of being able to share it. So we're kind of pulling around with developing our own things. We wouldn't have to share handlers or try other things. Or we could try share a handler, download that. Armitage and Cobalt Strike, I think, have some really cool stuff in them with like sharing sessions and passing around handlers. I just haven't played with it, and I don't think it would fit our use because we like to keep. We're attacking, real clients here, getting real customer data. So we want to keep it as separate as we can, not sharing anything. And the other thing that we could do is just wait. So if the other consultant's using that IP and that port and that handler, just wait for him to be done with the project, and then okay, you're done. I can move on. Or we could try and report like 80 or $20 or something that's common to be allowed outbound by egress filtering. So we didn't like any of the solutions. And so I was thinking one night, hey, we could just do a reverse proxy. So we have one handler listening on the perimeter, and then we have a bunch of internal handlers listening anywhere. And then a reverse proxy like Apache, Nginx, or like Squid or something can just say, hey, you're this target, route to this handler. And that works. That actually works. It's really cool. If you go write Apache rules for like a certain road IP address or a certain domain name, you can kind of run it anywhere. But that's not dynamic enough, and it doesn't really work unless you know everything about the target to begin with. So enter the real solution, ShellSquid. This is a program that is built using mainly Node and a really cool module from the guys at Node Jitsu called HTTP proxy. So I wouldn't have been able to be built without them. It's a lot of work. It uses MongoDB on the back end to kind of track all this data, and uses AngularJS for kind of some client-side templating and handling all the real-time information that comes through. And yeah, this talk doesn't have a lot, but it has a really long demo, so let's try this. Okay, so first, let's just take a quick look at the configuration file for this. Okay, so the configuration file is just a JSON file, and so ShellSquid has two pieces: a web API for controlling it and a proxy. So you want your proxy listening on the perimeter IP, and that's going to be my VMware IP here, so it's not the printer IP, but it will act as one. And I'm going to have the web API listening on localhost, but you probably want to have it listening on your internal interface so all your different teams could operate with it. And since we're using SSL, we need a certain IP. And it also has a default handler, so if for some reason like stray shells come in, you still want to get those. And a default handler port. And it also has this, and this is kind of the main reason why it actually works, is you put alphanumeric shellcode in the shellcode piece, and I will show why that works. And so, yeah, just you put alphanumeric shellcode in there. So I have my database in front of me. All right. ShellSquid is going. Okay, so it looks kind of weird at this resolution, and I do apologize for that, at least on my screen. But just a tour of the interface real quick. It just has a quick message showing your default handler. It will look at all your handlers too and let you know if they're alive or down. So right now the default one is down, so it's red. As requests hit the proxy, sometimes it's nice to see those coming in, so you'll see them streaming in. And it will also let you know, it'll kind of keep track on the client how many sessions it's seeing and give you a track of those. And it also gives you your targets as well. So let's set up some handlers. Okay, so enter next problem. The Metasploit handler for reverse HTTPS, every single time it connects back, the handler, or the payload, sets the URL for whatever you had localhost to. So when I was originally doing this, I was working on it, and I was like, oh man, that worked. Like, that's awesome. And then I looked at the connection, and it wasn't actually going through my proxy. It was going through my proxy in the initial connection, and then going around. So that's like, well, that's not ever going to work in like a real environment. So I had to kind of slightly edit and add about 2 lines of code to the built-in stager and built-in handler in Metasploit, and those are available for download. But they're called proxy HTTPS and proxy HTTP. And they just take a couple more settings than the usual payload. It takes a proxy host and a proxy port, so it'll set that URL for the proxy instead of your host. Okay, so that's running. And then let's pretend like we're targeting a real company, and we'll set up our own handler right here. So I have another handler running on port 10,000. And you can see the listener is actually on my local host, so it's not on the same IP space as our perimeter. So if you go to our app, you can see that, hey, the handler's green because it's alive. And we'll just create a new one. So I'll just Shmoocon. I'm Tom.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, guys. Let's hope this works. And when I look for 10,000, right?
Yes.
That's 10,000. Okay. I'm sorry? Was it 100,000? You're lying. You're such a jokester, you. It was 10,000. Okay, so other options here. It actually can work by domain name. We're not going to use the domain name option, but if you set your payload to use a certain subdomain or like a fully qualified domain name, it will actually work. So that's cool. And you can give it the a non-default shellcode, but for the most part, the default shellcode is just going to work because this is for Windows. You could use other payloads as well, but as long as they're easy to work. But we're just going to stick with the default. So we create that, and it's populated, and like the handlers are both green, cool. You can like put this in view. Tour the interface real quick. These are all like searchable, right? So like you can search real quick. Like if you had 20 people using the same interface, you know it just becomes really good. Okay. So now, our session's listening. Let's look up on Windows box. All right, so now, in turn, how this actually works. So I created a payload based off of off of basically a generic kind of C#.NET payload that injects shellcode into memory. What I do with it is took it and made it so the shellcode gets pulled over HTTPS, so for a little bit more obfuscation from AB, so in case AB ever like keys in on some string or something that's in there, it works. So what it does is it hits this URL, which is basically, you configure it to hit this URL, which is your proxy IP /DL/ID, which is just this unique ID here. So if you look at it, no remote IPs right now. I'm going to simulate it just because I don't want to like have you watch the file, so it's weird. Okay, so that's cool. It goes to the proxy, says, hey, I'm looking for the shellcode for this unique identifier. Give me the shellcode. And so internally, your payload will do this if you use my payload. If you don't want to use my payload, somehow you're just going to have to make a call to register your remote IP by calling the download. Or use a domain name. So you get this big message that's like, hey, shellcode deployed to this target. Awesome. And when you click here, you see the request for shellcode is 1, and all of a sudden, your target IP gets added to remote IPs. So now any subsequent requests that come in from this remote IP will be forwarded on to the correct handler, which is 10,000. Okay, and now the fate of live demos is actually testing this out. So we'll try like a generic payload here. And there is some weird latency with the internal VMware network. I have a video online where I'm like launching hundreds of shells, and there is no latency between the VMware network. It's not the proxy. I don't know why that is. I'm sorry. It's just the VMware really weird. But cool. We have a new session, and you're seeing all the Metasploit requests come in, and the session count is increased by 1. And you can like disable logging if you want to, if that works, because it might be annoying looking at all those things go by. And you can interact with it. You hope. Cool. Shellcode proxy. And like I said, I would really love to show you guys just really clicking and like literally thousands of shells just streaming by. VMware, cool story, bro. Like it's not working. But like the default handler works. So like if I click here, should eventually get a shell link to VMware. Yeah. Okay. So session opened on the default handler, so it works. So now we have a session on the default handler and the Shmoo handler. I've tested this with about 20 targets based on like all the VMs I could pull on my network, and literally launching hundreds of shells. And I don't know how much everyone knows about Node, but Node's really fast for network I/O, so it works really well. And that's kind of the demo. And as you probably noticed when I pull up the webpage, it has my coworkers notified me today. I didn't already know it. No auth. I didn't build it in yet. I'm going to build it in. Don't freak out. So there's no auth yet. My advice to you is to put it behind SSH and use SSH port forwarding for now, or submit a pull request with auth built in. Thank you for you guys letting me talk. Thanks for approving my talk. And I want to say thank you to my company for sending me here to let me give the talk. Here's my contact info if you'd like to get hold of me. There's my email, my Twitter, and the link to my GitHub where I have some more code besides this, and a link to ShellSquid, of course. Thank you. Any questions? Yes. That's a good question. So I get asked that quite frequently. I'm a big fan of not writing SQL because I feel like I'm more productive that way. I don't care about scale. I care about, oh, I can put an object in the database and do it on the file. And if you don't think that's cool, use Postgres. Anyone else? Yes. The web interface is Bootstrap, but you notice it doesn't look very Bootstrap-y. I spent a lot of time designing that. I am not a web designer, but I spent weeks making that pretty. So I wanted it to look good, and I'm really tired of seeing black nav bar, white background, nav well. So no more. If you're going to use Bootstrap, change the font, change the background, do some cool stuff. Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you.
Dude, 8%, whatever. Okay. 8%. Talk to me when you have.
How's that? Are we set up?
The thing is, it started to drag so far behind, I don't know. Make sure that whenever it switches into, do you use presenter mode?
No.
As long as this is 1024 by 768, then we shouldn't. It should switch when we go to presenter mode, so we should be good.
How's that?
Because of how the capture card works, unfortunately I don't know. But as long as that's not in presenter mode, as long as it's still 1024 by 768 right now, we're good.
Is he good?
I think so, I hope. I know that's not very confident in Fire.